Israel-Gaza border, further showing that the conflict with Israel and Hamas is far from over. You can see some plumes of smoke there in the distance. Taking a close look there inside of Gaza, giving you a live look now outside of a hospital. We're learning on this Sunday morning, media outlets reporting that Israel's military did attack the upper floor of a hospital in Gaza City, killing at least 7 people and wounding some others critically. Again, this information coming from Gaza Civil Defense. Meanwhile, we're learning a baby in central Gaza has died this Sunday morning, marking the 5th infant to die from hypothermia there in the Gaza Strip. A lot to dissect this morning as it relates to conflict in the Middle East. We want to bring into the conversation the Jerusalem Bureau Chief for Jewish News Syndicate, Alex Traiman. Alex, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Good morning.
Sinead, thanks for having me.
I'd love to contextualize everything going on in Gaza right now. We can start with Israeli Defense Forces and what the Gaza Civil Defense Ministry calling an invasion of the hospitals. They're reporting at least 7 people are dead this Sunday morning. Can you provide some context? Why would IDF be inside of a hospital in the first place?
Sure. I mean, this has been a theme of the war since the IDF entered into Gaza. They have found that the Hamas has been using hospitals as their command and control centers inside the Gaza Strip, specifically for this type of headline and this type of moment. When the IDF will go in, then all of a sudden, international media report that the IDF storming a hospital in Gaza. Believe me, a hospital is the last thing that the IDF wants to be entering. But unfortunately, Hamas has again and again entered into these hospitals, using them as command and control centers, using them to keep hostages, using them also for storage of ammunition, RPGs, and other types of military equipment.
And Alex, we've actually seen in real time IDF being very candid, going inside of these hospitals, showing what they call the tunnel networks and how it'll go from a Hamas house to the hospitals, also showing artillery, grenades, different types of ammunition inside of these hospitals. The controversy around this lies, are people given notice? Are people allowed to evacuate who are currently getting treatment inside of these hospitals? What's leading to these civilian deaths as Gaza Civil Defense is reporting?
Well, Gazan civilian defense, I mean, it's an arm of Hamas. The Gazan Health Ministry is run by Hamas. So they're telling you whatever they're telling you. And the way it works with a terror organization is that the operatives are not always dressed as military. You have operatives, going as civilians. There's been reports of Hamas operatives trying to escape the hospital in ambulances, hiding as patients. So I think that you have to take all of this information with a grain of salt. But this is a hospital that Israel has entered into several times. Israel was in this same hospital in October, and Hamas continues to reorganize and go back into the hospitals time and again. And there was even reports that Israel had set fire to the Kamal Adwan hospital in Gaza. And that was an article that was published by the AP and appeared in thousands of newspapers across the world, saying Israel burns hospital in Gaza, but the IDF is denying that they had anything to do with the fire in this hospital. Said there may have been a small fire in the hospital, but the IDF had nothing to do with it, and it's been put out. So you're basically part of the Hamas propaganda battle here, which is why they're operating in the hospitals to begin with.
Alex, you raised a great point about Hamas hiding among civilians, and we've seen that in real times there in the Gaza Strip, across these refugee camps, literally having innocent Palestinian people and those in the Gaza Strip holding them as human shields. As this fighting ensues, we're seeing this humanitarian crisis out in that area in real time, learning another baby has died due to hypothermia. The question many viewers have this morning, where is the humanitarian aid? We have seen it there. We've seen it dropping from the sky. We've also seen Hamas literally take that aid and put it into the tunnels and save it for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, Israel's gone to lengths to deliver humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip that no military has ever undertaken in times of war. And I was just speaking with an Israeli soldier last night who spent months inside Gaza and has recently been let out from service, at least temporarily. And he told me not only are hundreds of trucks of humanitarian aid coming into Gaza on a daily basis, but that there are many trucks, as many as 100 trucks a day, that are coming from Jordan, which are going through Israeli territory and being allowed into Gaza. And because of demands that the Biden administration has made on Israel, Israel is not even permitted and is allowing itself to let this aid in without even checking the trucks for it. And there's only one reason why there would be a demand made by the Jordanians that Israel should not surveil and check what's on the trucks, and that's because they may be smuggling information. They may be smuggling equipment into Hamas that can be used in their battle against the IDF. So, this it's a very tricky situation here where you have tons of humanitarian aid pouring into the Gaza Strip, Israel surveilling some of it, not all of it, and then Hamas taking control of it once it gets to the Strip. And I think that in the coming weeks, particularly when the Trump administration takes over and enters office, that you're going to see Israel actually take a much firmer stance and hand in terms of making sure that the humanitarian aid that's actually pouring into Gaza gets distributed to civilians and is not any longer taken by Hamas and used for their terror purposes.
Yeah, and as we are discussing this humanitarian aid, many people on both sides of this conflict demanding that further sanctions and consequences need to be held against UNRWA, as we have seen allegations and accusations of Hamas actually working closely with them. I love your professional opinion, Alex, as far as who do you think needs to be held accountable. I know you did mention the Biden administration and what that transition with President-elect Donald Trump looks like. But again, a lot of pressure on Israel, as we know there are still hostages in Hamas captivity while this humanitarian crisis is happening.
Exactly. There's areas inside the Gaza Strip that the IDF is not touching right now with military activity. And the reason why they're not going into those areas is because it's believed that this is where hostages may be right now. So, Israel in a very difficult spot. The Palestinians in Gaza are in an extraordinarily difficult spot. And it's a spot that's been brought about by Hamas and the way that they have spread out all of their terror infrastructure among the civilian population. They've created a situation whereby it takes Israel over 14 months now to go through the entirety of the Gaza Strip and to go north to south and then to go back to the north and go back into places where they were previously, because they continuously move among the civilian population, forcing the IDF to do this game of cat and mouse with Hamas operatives. And the ones who are suffering ultimately right now are Gazan civilians. And the question that really nobody's asking is, how come Gazan civilians that wish to leave the war zone are not being afforded the basic human right to do so? Every single last member of Gaza, every single last resident there has been forced to stay in the Gaza Strip. There's no opportunity for these perpetual refugees to be actual refugees and to leave the Strip and to find a safer and warmer place to stay as the winter months begin.
Yeah, you actually read my mind, because I wanted to go in that direction. I know a lot of pressure on Egypt to open up and allow those innocent people to seek refuge. We keep hearing this phrase here in America, Alex, there's no safe place in Gaza, but you further mentioned that there are areas and territories that IDF has not even gone into for an incursion because of the concern of refugees and also the concern of hostages that could still be in Hamas captivity.
Yeah, I mean, Israel's taken tremendous efforts to move refugees out of harm's way. Every time they go into an area, they alert the civilian population to leave. They put out warnings this morning in this area around the hospital, alerting civilians that they should take the Salah al-Din humanitarian corridor that they opened up early in the war and move south out of that area, because the IDF is going to be entering those areas once again. So Israel goes out of its way to move civilians, but there are certain areas where they just can't operate because of fear of killing the hostages. And right now, at this point in the war, that is a major, major priority for Israel, to get the remaining hostages out of the Gaza Strip alive and get the return of whichever bodies can be identified as being killed as soon as possible.
Alex Trayman, always a pleasure when we can have these candid and controversial conversations. I want to ask you before we let you go, right here we are about to embark on a new year, days away from 2025, and yet many people across the globe still holding on to hope that there will be some type of ceasefire resolution to get those remaining hostages home. To think it's been over a year looking back to October 7th. Family members don't know if their loved ones are dead or alive. Hamas using these people as bargaining tools. What can you share with us at this hour to provide those families some type of hope if they are starting to lose it closer to the new year?
Well, I think that the arrival of President Trump represents a different and a new opportunity for the return of hostages. We heard Trump say recently that if the hostages are not returned by the day of the inauguration, there will be all hell to pay. I think that moving forward, the Trump administration is going to put significantly more leverage against Hamas and on Israel's side, and may try to offer, carrots and sticks. They might turn around to Hamas and say, look, the Biden administration was insistent that humanitarian aid needed to enter the Gaza Strip. Trump might come around and say, hey, we're willing to double the amount of humanitarian aid that can enter into the Strip only if you release the hostages. And if you don't release the hostages, not only will we not double the amount of humanitarian aid, but we'll actually shut off the spigot of humanitarian aid. So if you think you're suffering now, you will suffer much greater if you don't release the hostages. So, I think that when you put the strength behind Israel, which was attacked on October 7th without being provoked, and you realize that the IDF is battling a terror organization that took hostages specifically for this purpose. If you put all your support behind your ally Israel and you take away any leverage against Hamas, you're much more likely to see the release of hostages sooner than later.
Alex Trayman, again, thank you so much for your candidness and perspective on this topic. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays to you as well.